Hello, I'm Anthony Sunquist. Today, I want to take a couple minutes to talk about the risks and benefits of psychedelics in recreation, recreational use, and in the medical field. Um, I'll start off with the cons because those are the most apparent things when you think of when you think of psychedelics. You think of it's a drug. It's illegal. That's one of the main things that you're gonna think of is that you can get in trouble for having, partaking, or being around somebody that is on psychedelics because who knows what they're gonna do. So there's a stigma and a taboo around psychedelics, and for very good reasons sometimes. Um, but the main thing we think of when we think of psychedelics, most people will think of like hippies and music festivals and hallucinating and seeing things that are not there, which isn't always going to happen on a psychedelic trip, which people I don't think always realize. You're not necessarily going to, it's going to manifest differently for everybody, depending on what drug you're taking, the amount that you're taking, and what setting and environment you're in. Um, Another con would be just the lack of regulation when we think of psychedelics because it's not accepted in society to take psychedelics necessarily. So people usually do it, with their friends in a party setting or by themselves, and therefore it is not regulated in any way, shape, or form, and that's where problems can arise with overdosing or taking too much or having a bad trip, which is can result in psychotic breakdowns and snaps. And I personally can speak on psychedelics, and this is why I chose this as my topic because I have had multiple experiences in my lifetime, not any recently, but Ithaca, where I've been growing up my whole life, is it's a academic town, but there's an underbelly, a very big underbelly that's like the whole other side of the town almost. It's just like a drug. It's just a drug town, it doesn't mean that you are going to be forced to be involved in that life at all. You can obviously live in Ithaca and have nothing to do with drugs, but the way I see it is, if you live in Ithaca every single day of your life, or you just walk around, eventually you're gonna see somebody that's on something. It just happens. You see people on drugs in Ithaca, like in public. It just happens eventually. Like it's just a matter of time. So like Ithaca is a very good example, I think, when looking at the dangers of not having regulations in place or having people be too scared to partake in something that is really medicine when you get down to it, and shouldn't be played around with at all in the settings that it's being played around with. And there are ways that it can be beneficial in recreational use, which I'm going to get to later, but the risks are very important to be aware of because some people can think of it being scary because you're not in control, you can't see stuff, and some people can think of it as very enlightening. And it really depends on how you look at it, and that's kind of how it is. It's going to be if you partake in these drugs because it's going to have an effect depending on you and your mindset and your mind state. If you're in a bad place and you take psychedelic drugs, you might have a bad trip. You might see some negative, energies around you and stuff like that because you're manifesting that because it's coming out of you. So that's why it's very dangerous to have it in the unregulated environment in which it exists in modern times now. And it's important to note that in tradition and history, when we look back into the past, we see that many societies and cultures used psychedelic medicines in their rituals and their rites and all types of rites of passage and becoming of age situations. It was just a religious part of it it was an aspect of their religion and their life. It was just something that the earth gave to them, and they respected it as they would a crop or an animal. It was just something that they knew that they needed to understand and respect. And we in modern times have put that, that like, oh, you're not supposed to look at it and talk about it because tab is drugs, it's bad. And in reality, it's really not that way at all. It can be bad, and it can have dire effects on your mental state if you do not take them in the right way. But uh, it's very important to just have the right mindset going in. And I'm thinking specifically of some things that Dr. Robin Carhart Harris said. He's the head of psychedelic research at the Imperial College London. He was having a lecture, yeah, lecture on the therapeutic mechanisms of psychedelic medicine, and he said that psychedelics as a word is actually two words combined in Latin root, and it comes from psyche, which is your soul or your mind, and whatever however you want to look at it, and then there's delos, which is manifesting or making something visible. So with psychedelics. So if you put those two together, it is really just making parts of your mind visible to you that you could not see before, that you normally cannot see. So it's really just connecting parts of your brain that aren't going to always be connected, and that's why people can have scary experiences, or people can have amazing, enlightening experiences, and they can see different things that you're not normally seeing because our brains are connecting and firing off synapses that aren't normal, that are normally dormant or aren't being looked at. And that's where a lot of the therapeutic benefits can come in, because when dealing with trauma and PTSD and depression and a lot of different mental illnesses that people have, psychedelics can connect certain parts of the brain that normally we could not connect through any other means. And it's a way of opening up doors to possible solutions for mental problems that cannot be opened in any other way. And also not just solely psychedelics. Normally they have to be mixed in with some sort of other therapy. Taking a micro dose and talking to somebody about something traumatic or something can actually really help people process traumatic events. Um, and it can just take the weight off of you, really. It feels like it's not something that defines you anymore, and it feels more like it's just something that happened that you need to talk about, and then you talk about it, and then the trip of whatever you're on helps you talk about it. I've watched videos about people that have traumatic experiences, and they'll microdose on different drugs, and then they'll lay down in a therapist chair and just talk about things, and afterwards they just have this air and light about them. They feel like they just look like they have so much lifted off of them. So I totally full-heartedly believe in the benefits of psychedelics, and if you look around, there's a change in the tide of how the way people are feeling about it, because look at what just happened in Oregon. They they criminalized it, but that's why it's important to talk about the risks as well, because I've had very good experiences on different trips or whatever that I've had, and I have had some not so great ones. Um, and obviously, I'm talking about something that's technically illegal, but that's because that's how it's forced to exist in our lives, when it really is just part of our history and our tradition, and something that can be very beneficial to us, that we're not tapping into its full potential. Um, for example, it can help with creativity. I I was a drawer when I was younger. I don't really do it so much anymore, but there was a period of time in my life where I was doing a lot of different stuff. And I actually drew a whole world, like a map, and I created this whole like it's a real place to me. It exists somewhere in my mind, like it's real. Like it's not just something I made up. Like in my mind, I was taking it and just putting it on paper. But like this is just a very very brief example of how it can help you with your creativity and expanding your mind and stuff, and like just to kind of hammer in how like this is really a place to me. So okay, if you look at this island right here, so I took this island and I then drew the island in more detail. And then if you see there's a city right here, I then took that and I drew the city all from a bird's eye view. And this is all off of, not, I wasn't on anything at the moment, but it was during a period of time in my life where I was on things. And it just brought out very creative sides in me. And also, there was bad sides that, you don't have necessarily the best thinking function all the time. And it can also have lasting effects. I went to the hospital because I took something the wrong way, that is normally supposed to have a short effect that's very intense. I somehow flipped it and did not experience it when I took it, and it was then somehow spread out over a long period of time, over like weeks, where I would just have these like almost like PTSD episodes. I would just sit down and I couldn't do anything, and I would just sweat profusely, and I would have these visions of a life that I lived that I've never lived, basically. Like memories, I have memories that are mine that were not. I've never lived these memories, and I would just like space out, and it would happen at work. It happened when I was driving a car one time, and I had to pull over to the side of the road. Um, and I had to go to the hospital for it, and they gave me a shot that helps with like seizures or something, because that's the only way they could classify it. And when I told them that I had smoked DMT the month before, and that it had started happening after that, they didn't even know what DMT was at the hospital, which is concerning to me, and that shows the disparity and the lack of information and knowledge about psychedelics, and it's just something that needs to be addressed and looked into, and I don't know why it's not being looked into. So hopefully this speech can inspire some people to dig deeper into its benefits, and this is in no way, shape, or form encouraging anybody to ever partake in psychedelics. Um, that is not something I would encourage. Um, if it's something that you're going to do, I do encourage you to do it in a safe environment with people that you trust. And if you have some sort of mental illness, I suggest that that's an avenue that you leave open as a possibility, because it can be beneficial in the right therapeutic setting, and that's just a fact. It's been proven, and if we could also just open our minds to the the idea that it's not this taboo and this bad thing, then I think it could really become a very very beneficial part of society.